As you guys seen in our last video, struts and springs came in, so we're gonna be throwing those in today. Hopefully our lift kit comes in from Anderson Design. We ordered that and it should be getting close, so let's go ahead and get started on this. Okay, so there we go. We already got the wheel and tire off, so we got access to our strut, so we can start pulling that off. We just got to pop the hood. But first off, what we got here is a full set of Bilstein Struts, and I went with the B6s, I believe. I went for the little bit more aggressive ones, and we got ourselves a set of King springs, and we went with the Stealth Black and a medium spring, I believe. I went for just a touch bit more weight on these ones. I think there was a way to select them. I got these from Bilsteins themselves, and the springs came from Primitive Racing. So they both shipped out pretty quickly, about a week. And now we can get rid of our sloppy, blown out Subaru suspension. Okay, so I finished the driver's or the passenger side, and it got away from me a little bit. So we're gonna take the driver's side apart, and I'll show you how to do it because I got it mostly figured out. But when I was putting that one back together, I found this washer that's supposed to go in the top hat assembly somewhere, and I don't know where it came from. So now we gotta take the driver's side apart and figure out where this washer goes so I can take the passenger side back apart, put that washer in there, so everything will be perfect. Okay, so now that we got the wheel exposed, you have two 19mm nuts right here and right here holding the bottom of your shock assembly on. And then you got two 12s, one holding your speed sensor, the other one on the other side holding your brake line, and then you got three 12s on top holding your top hat in place. So let's go ahead and bust out all of those and get this one pulled out so we can take it apart. So we got our nice new Bilstein strut here, our King spring still wrapped up from packaging, and you can always tell what side is which because of what side these brackets fall on. They're not marked passenger or driver's side that I know of, but how I figured it out was from where the speed density bracket is and the brake line bracket is, and I marked or matched it up with what the factory strut had, and that's how I determined what side went where. So now that we have that figured out, we need to take this apart. And the plug for it is here, so that'll be the nut for the top of your strut. Just don't lose this. We'll set this aside. But before we can take that apart and take this whole assembly off the top, what we need to do is got our spring compressors on here. Press the spring down so this way this won't fly off, and hopefully we won't lose anything this time. So the top nut for your strut, for your stock one, is going to be 17. So your top hat, and this is what we lost in the other one, washer This plate we need this piece as well. This we need to set aside. You want that. And we want that. This is now garbage. So once you get this little foam piece on, your little dust boot will sit right over that. Spring will sit in the perch. There's a little indentation right here. Make sure the bottom of the spring matches that indentation. Little rubber piece will go on top. This piece took some figuring out. So those 3 little circles need to be in line with where this bracket is. And there you go. King Springs, BC Struts, stock top hat. Ugh. Okay. So now we got our strut and spring all put together. God, this is heavy. Now we'll just do the opposite. We'll put it back in. 3 top hat nuts, 2 bottom bolts, put the brake line back in, and the speed sensor. And then the front is done. Alright everybody, welcome back for day 2. Had to cut it short last time due to work issues and having to go to work. So now let's finish the rear struts and King Springs for the Forester. But first, somebody pointed out to me that the front of the car already started to look taller. So let's pull a measurement for the rear for a before and after and see if maybe these springs and new struts do just give it just a little bit of a lift. So right from the top of the tire, it looks like we're sitting at about 4 inches from the top of the tire to the top of the arch on our stock suspension. Alright, so we got one side built and it was a little bit more intense than I thought it was going to be honest. I think the rear control arms or rear trailing arms, whatever they are in the very back of this car, has been replaced before, and it's been done at a shop because they were incredibly hard to break loose. Like I had to do a can of PB blaster on them. I almost stripped one. Like it was insane the amount of torque they had on them. But I got one side out by dropping the arm out and then slipped that out and we rebuilt it. Now I'm just hoping, see we got it like rebuilt right here, but I'm hoping the top hat and the bottom bushing are in line close enough to get the bolt back through, to get the arm back up and in. So the one thing I've been finding out on these is replacing them is that there's a certain way they all have to sit, and it's really frustrating when you just miss the mark and have to take all back apart again and do it for a second time. And I think my drill is going to blow up. It's really hot. Anyways, so moving to the top here, so all this stuff has to come out. Your floor mat, the cover, and all the cubbies, focus, all the cubbies have to come out of here. So everything has to come out of here. You've got a center cubby, there's some little flaps on this side, pull this cubby out. There's a plastic piece that runs on top of that, that pops out. Then you have a little plastic piece that covers this, that comes away, and you've got 1 and 2 14mm nuts for the top of the top hat. So once you get those out, close that. Then it's just the fact of undoing these nuts right here. There's one right here, one right here, and then a sway bar right there. So the one for the knuckle and the one for the strut is going to be a 17, and then the one for the sway bar is going to be a 14. Take all those out so that arm can come through, and then you can just pull it right out. So I'm going to take the passenger side out now so I can compare it to the one we just built and make sure we're somewhat in line. So it looks like I've got it somewhat fairly straight. It should be close enough to go back in. But here's just a good look on the size difference of the stock spring versus what we're putting in there. A lot beefier. Alright, that should be enough on the spring compression. So now we gotta take the nut out. Stock one's gonna be a 14. So when that nut just wants to spin without actually coming out, the trick that I've learned is the socket holding the nut, put a vice grip on that, and then a 5mm star key, or a hex key, whatever you want to call them. And that'll hold that. And then we can take this nut off without the strut spinning. There's the old nut. Top hat that we need to put on our new one. Dust shield that we need to transfer over. And our stop. For this application, they give you a new perch, and that's just going to rest at the bottom. Our stop. Put that on until that bottom's out. Dust shield rides on top. Our new heavy duty king spring. And then that final coil right there is going to ride in that lip just so the spring can ride flat. Okay, so we got the other side finally on. The wheels all put back on. That side was a little bit more of a struggle trying to get the lower arm lined back up with the hole. We got it, everything's torqued down, wheels are back on, we're ready to drop it on the ground. But first I'm going to put the inside back together, and then we can see if we actually gained any height from these or not. I think we did. The front looks taller, but we'll know here in a second. So let's go ahead and put all of this stuff back inside. I think the springs might have to settle in a little bit. This is saying we're at 5 3/4 now, which means we gained over 1.5 inches of height. Okay, so I'm going to drive it around for about 3 days and see if the rear end settles at all. Because right now it says we gained 1 3/4 inches just from changing to these springs and shocks. Now I do believe we have gained some height, but I don't believe we've gained that much just from swapping out some springs and putting in new struts, unless they were super blown, and I don't think they were. So it's going to be about 3 days before I can get back to this and install our lift, which is a 2-inch lift. So that'll give plenty of time back and forth from work for it to settle, and I'll remeasure in that video before we lift it to see if that's a true height or what we actually got. So first steps finally completed. Hope you guys are enjoying this. I know I'm loving this new car, and I don't know why I haven't owned Subaru before. These things are surprisingly easy to work on. So stay tuned. We just got our wheels and tires in, so we'll be sending those off tomorrow to get mounted and balanced. Coming up, we'll do the 2-inch lift, and we'll put wheels and tires on, and then we'll go from there. So stay tuned, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.